Okay, well, we had a question at the forum today about how to use GSD files that have pictures in them. So I thought I'd show you one of my old projects, and before I forget, I'll show you where you can find the printable tutorial for this. It's at the MTC Toots Yahoo group in the Files section. If you go to Files and then go down to Advanced Tutorials, Advanced Lessons, you'll find the printable illustrated tutorial. It's number 10, lesson 10. So they're not in order because Yahoo doesn't show them in order, but it's this one, print and cut without registration marks, and then the painted flower red. You can download these, and as you're reviewing the Vimeo recording of this, you can come in and follow along to see how we do this. There's a few additions here because I'm going to show you how to get the GSD files. So we'll go into Make the Cut, and I'll make the screen just a little bigger here. And you'll notice I'm using the contrast mat, and that'll help see the image that's imported. Now, B wanted to know what to do about this problem. When you click on a GSD icon here, you should be able to import a GSD file. I have one here that was made by Greet, and she's from the Netherlands, I believe. She posted this years ago in the Wishblade group, and I asked for permission to use it to do a tutorial and to teach the classes. So she said yes, and so I have her permission to use her designs here. This is 3D Decoupage Design. So when I double click on this GSD file, it comes in here, you'll notice, with no pictures. Well, the file originally had pictures in these shapes, but there are not any. And you'll notice that this shape is not filled. Whenever you get a design, especially imported from in a GSD format, that is not filled when it comes in, it means that there are some open paths in the design. I can find those open paths by clicking on the figure 8 up in the left corner and clicking on the pen or the pencil icon. When you do that, you'll see some green dots. So you see, oh, those are where the open paths are. So I remember where those are. Click on the second arrow and left click on the line where I saw the dot, and right click and click on Join Node to closest node, and you see how it fills it in. It just closed that open shape. But this still doesn't help us because we don't see the picture. So in Make the Cut, we have really a much better way to bring in images and get the lines drawn around them, and that is to use a pixel trace to import the image itself. So up here about the center of the top toolbar is a series of squares here. I'm going to left click on pixel trace, and I'm going to select this same image, painted flower red, double click it, and you'll see that I get a little preview of it here. Well, it's not dark enough yet. What I want to do is click on Texturize Path, and for the purposes of this design, I'm going to click on Blackout Path. Now, we need to raise the threshold on this image to about 220, judging from my previous experiments with this file. I'm going to click on Apply Changes, and what you're going to see here is most of the image filled in with color with design lines around the outer edge, which is what we want so that we can cut around the design after we print it. It would be a print and cut file. But zooming in a little bit here, I see some places that have little holes in the design, like right here. Let's see if there's any more down here. Yeah, some here. So the threshold is not quite high enough. I'm going to take it up to 230 and apply changes and see if that helps. Well, that filled in a little more, but I still have a little broken segment right in this design, and it would still print, but I would kind of like to have that filled in a little more, so I'm going to take it up to 240 and click on Apply Changes. So that filled in the gaps there, filled it in there. Her signature is attached to this, but we'll fix that a little bit later. Now let me show you what happens if we take it to the maximum. There's a little section here that could be filled in a little more. Let me do 245 and apply changes. And this is what happens if you get the threshold too high, and this is what she was complaining about, is that all she got was the cutting lines around the square. Well, that's not what we want, because we do want to have the cutting lines around the shape. So I would take it back to 240, apply the changes, and we get some extra lines here, but they'll be easily deleted. I don't think they're connected over here on the left now, so they'll be easy to remove. And we'll fix this little spot after we get it in. So all I do is click on Import and Finish Tracing. So this is the design. Let's see, what did I do with the original file? GSD file was actually larger than this. Let me bring it in again. Oh, it's over here. I'm going to copy this, Control C, and go back to this page here, Control Shift V. So you can see that this GSD file was quite a bit bigger. So if I were trying to line this up, I'd have a little bit of a problem. I'd have to resize and get them the same. But I'm going to just get rid of the GSD image anyway, or just move it to the side. I can use it later for deciding which size that I would like to keep. The first thing I'm going to do with this image, though, is to click on this icon down here for split, or type Control P. So I'm going to split apart these pieces so that I can edit them separately. I can click on these extra lines and press the delete key to get rid of them. And I can drag around this extra stuff here and click delete, and any other extra little lines that might show up, I don't see any. So these, now I can either take them as is or I can edit. Well, I don't want this on my design to print. So I think what I'll do is just take my eraser tool, which is a huge help when taking a look at designs like this. I'll click on that figure 8 and click on the eraser tool. Now if I leave it on erase, I have it set at 1 millimeter. You can set it larger or smaller as you need. I'm going to hold the Control key, click and drag to get rid of this. Now if I get a little bit closer, hold the Control, click and drag, I can clean that up pretty well. Now all I need to do is select these two pieces, split again, and now I can delete this little piece. And zooming in closer, I'm going to take a real good look at the lines that we have drawn, and I'd like to close in that little hole, and it's really easy to do that. I'm again going to take the eraser, click on the eraser tool, but this time I'm going to make it an inverse eraser by clicking the box at the top. I'll leave it at 1 millimeter, and if I don't hold the control key, I get a free form. But you just see what happened when I erased the shape there. It filled in with the design, which is what I wanted to do. Now, if I wanted to get rid of any other little bumps or irregularities in the file, let's say there's a little bump here. I'm going to zoom in really close so I can take care of that little bump. In this type of design, it probably wouldn't matter much, but again, I'm going to go to the regular eraser, hold the control key, and just drag close to that little bump. I could do it another way too. And I'm looking at all these design lines to make sure that there's no little white pieces showing that I would rather not have showing. For example, over here, I could make that line hug the edge a little closer by clicking on this node editing tool, the second arrow. Left click here to select and just drag it over a little. So I can make adjustments in these lines so that less white shows up in the design. If I want to add a node, I double click here, and then I can just drag this in where I want it to be. And I can, this little bump here, I could left click and delete, right click and delete. Just get rid of the crooked line, click on the pen tool, Bezier tool, left click and right click, and my design comes back and the line is nice and smooth. So these are just some options. You can edit as you like. The closer that your lines are to your design, the more accurate your cut is going to be. I think I would like to maybe get rid of the little white here by just dragging this over. Same thing here. Just move the line, snug it up a little bit. And you can be as particular or not as you like. If I want to get rid of that bump a little more, I right click, delete node. And by deleting the node, I make that line smoother. So when I'm done editing, we'll take it back a little bit smaller here. I can go to this layer where all these are and right click. I have to select the top arrow first, so right click and send each piece to its own layer so that I can layer one above the other, so you can get an idea what this should look like after I get it cut out. This is the base piece, and I think these two pieces are the same. I don't know why there are two of them, but we can just send that one to the top, and then I'll put pop dots on it, and it'll sit right on top of the original design. I'll send this one to the top by clicking the smaller of the two green plus icons in the lower right corner and put a pop dot under it and stack it right on top here. And this ends up being a really nice 3D design. Again, I'll send this to the top and drag it over, and I'll put a pop dot there, and then click on this, send it to the top, and layer it right over the corresponding piece. And this is what they call 3D decoupage. And it's really nice when you get it all assembled. So when you have the pieces all ready to go, you can arrange them on your screen like you want them to print. And I'll back out a little bit. Now I want to see how big this is going to be. Oh, it is kind of small. It has a height of 2.24, 2¼ inches. I think I probably would, let me see what the size of this one is. I'll split it. Originally it was designed at about 2½ inches wide and about 2.6 inches, well, maybe 3 inches tall. So I can make this larger. I've moved it though, so it's not the same position as it was. Maybe I'll undo everything to get them back to their original position. Control Z does that. So now I can make this whole thing correspond to this size, which is 5.473. So I'm going to make sure my gold lock icon is here and change this one to 5.473, enter, and now I have the size that I would like it to be. If I were in other software, I'd have to go line this up, and it's not the same size. That's the problem, you know, measuring and you think you got it, and trying to make it line up perfectly is a real pain. This one is a little bigger, so you could get it to be whatever size you want it to be. I think a little bit bigger would be fine, but not that big. I'm going to be putting this in the middle of an A2 size card, so I don't want it to be huge. Maybe just a little smaller. Yeah, it's pretty close. So this part I'm just going to delete because I really don't need it. I've got cut lines, and to see the cut lines you go over to the virtual mat toolbar, click on the fill and outline arrow down there and look at outline, and you'll see that all we're going to get is these cut lines when we go to cut. Meanwhile, we can print these. And I use a little different method in the printable tutorial, but I'll show you this the way. If you're going to use registration marks, we'll go to File and Print Options, and I'll show the paper on the mat so that I'll know where to place these so that they will print. And I will print registration marks, and I'll just use the standard Make the Cut registration marks. If I were cutting to my Cameo, I might choose the Cameo marks. And I'll say OK, and now you see the green lines where my paper is going to be. You also see where the registration marks are here and here and here. So let's go to the print preview and see what that'll look like. There's the registration marks, so they're ready to go. And close, and then we can go ahead, and when we're ready to cut, we can cut the whole thing because we print this. The registration marks will be on the paper with the printed object, so we'll go to File and Print it on our printer. I usually select Best Photo, and the type of paper. I like to use photo paper, presentation matte paper when I print so that I'll get a good print, and then I'll print OK. I'm not going to print it right now, but I will show you the print preview again. So this paper, this will be printed on the paper, and then I'll put the paper on my mat, and I will go through the steps necessary to cut this, and I don't have my, I'll just choose the Zing, and when I go to cut this, I need to select Print and Cut here, and then I'm going to have to test my connection and I'm not going to do that because I'm not hooked up right now to my cutter, but I'd go ahead and print this on my printer, put it on my mat, cut it, line up the laser lights with the first registration mark, the second, and the third, and then go ahead and cut. And when it cuts, it's going to cut on these lines that you see here. And it's pretty simple. When I do a print and cut project, though, I really like to have a bleed line. Now, in my tutorial, I have you, especially for those who don't have an optical reader or a laser for print and cut projects, I have you add a kind of a bleed by going to the basic shapes and adding a square. Send it to the top, and we just put the square around the whole thing and move it to the bottom and change the color on that so that it coordinates with that design that we're printing. We can fine-tune that color a bit by doing a custom color and just selecting a color that might go with it a little bit better. Clicking OK. I don't like that color too well. I could do Brian's trick of finding the RGB values of these specific colors and printing them that way. Well, if this is printed this way, when this line cuts, then if there's anything showing, it would be the pink instead of white. Now, one way to do it, let's say we're using my Gazelle and the laser light wasn't lining up right, or my Pazel's Inspiration doesn't have a way to do print and cut, I would first just cut out this square on a piece of paper. I would print this whole thing and then hand cut around this line and place it in the cutout square on my mat so I know that it's lined up exactly where my cutter expects it to be. And then I go ahead and hide that square and I cut this out, and it would cut right where the printed image is. But it's nice to have machines now that have print and cut technology that allow me to do that without messing around. But I really do want to add a bleed line. If I'm printing on white paper, I like to do my bleeds just by doing an inset shadow of a -0.01. I don't need to black out. I want to select all of them, and I want to do that shadow -0.01. I don't know why that's blacking it out there. Very strange. Oh, it's because this one's not on the top. If this were on the top layer above everything, then it would black all of them out. So I can send everything to the top, and you can see those are the lines it's going to cut on. But I want them on the bottom. Move layer to bottom. And again, I can change the color, but it doesn't matter. All this is going to do is cause the design to be cut inside the printed lines, which is what I want it to do. So there's a little adjustment that might need to be made when you go to cut this line. If you hide this one, you hide all of these, the registration marks move a little bit, just about a 0.100th inch in, and that changes the accuracy of your cut. So I like to use Brian's little trick that he does of making a little extra line here. Left click and right click, and left click and right click. It's outside of the design that would print, and then line up with those if I need to. I think Brian uses L, right, Brian? Just like these shapes. But at least, or do you do them on the outside square or wherever you want it to cut?
Yeah, wherever I wanted to cut. Whatever you want to include, yeah.
So then it doesn't matter if I don't have these printed designs showing on my screen. I can hide all by going to the eye and hide all and just show this layer and my black lines that I just added wherever I put them. Show all. I would want to put those lines to their own layers. Send it to the top. Send this one to the top. Now I just select these two, send them to their own layer, and I can leave that layer open, whether I want to cut just the black.
Julie?
Yes.
Those two little dots have to be bigger, out further than your actual biggest picture.
Right. I'm not going to be cutting the pink one though if I do this. So I think they're okay.
When it prints the registration marks, they're still going to be as far as the widest thing out.
Yeah, like these. So I can move them wherever I want. The idea is if I have this open, it's not going to change the position of my cut lines, of my registration marks anyway. So I can, when I go to print, I have all this showing, and then when I go to cut, I hide everything and leave just this so that it cuts there, and I also show those extra lines. So my registration marks stay the same as they were when they were printed or when they are cutting. So I don't know if I caused you any more confusion, but the idea here is that you can bring in a pixel trace design without having to worry about resizing it. You can edit your cut lines just like you would have to do, but it saves a step and make the cut. In other software you have to bring in the image and you have to make the cut lines. And make the cut creates those cut lines when you import the image, which is really, really nice.